All right, welcome to today's podcast. It's 9 o'clock on a Tuesday night. This is not the normal time that I record podcasts. I hadn't even planned to record a podcast today, but this is part of the topic for today's conversation, which is feel the fear and do it anyway. But I do have fear of not showing up prepared. And this show is not a fully prepped show, and it's kind of a vulnerability exercise. And I've been thinking about this and how it plays a part with, Partner Up Profits as a whole, because typically we talk about influencers, partners, affiliates, and everything that drives more sales for businesses through partnership marketing. But I think at the core, it comes down to beliefs and our mindset. And I've got a lot of stories that I just really haven't shared up until now. And I thought, every now and then I would really love to share these stories, because when I do share them, they inspire others and they remind me to continue to make gains and be disciplined in the action of feeling the fear and doing it anyway, being committed to continue to take action in our life and continue to make gains and evolving. So today's episode is a little bit different. It's going to be a shorter format, and it's just a simple lesson for you to take with you and apply to one area in your life that will translate to business. But really, this is a philosophy you can take with you no matter what you're doing, no matter what your background, and no matter what your starting point is. So I read a book. This is a book, by the way. It's called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. It's a very quick read. It's a simple technique at its core, but everyone fears feeling the fear and doing something. Think about whenever you have to break up with somebody. Think about whenever you want to ask for a raise or anything that's uncomfortable. Jumping out of a plane, doing a cold plunge for the first time. There's this fear that stops us from acting. I think that's built in as a mechanism of survival. But now that we are in a safe environment, for the most part, this fear lives with us a lot of time and can oftentimes stop us from taking action. This applies to anything we're doing. Think about how many times you don't take action and you fear and you hesitate. You have a concern and you want to think it through, and there's so many things, and this isn't a bad thing. You just have to keep it at bay. And I was thinking of times in my life where, I felt this fear, and after reading this book, I decided, hey, we're going to do this. I'm going forward. Because the difference between, a lot of people who are successful or get to the next level in their life or continue to find more happiness is facing that fear and going through this adversity to some level, where other people don't. They stop. They don't want to face any more fears. They don't want to go through that next barrier. They don't want to feel that uncomfortableness that people feel. So, I want to ask, when was the last time you felt fear? For myself, after reading the book, and again, it's so simple of a concept, but it was so powerful. Everyone feels fear. You're not alone when you ask for a raise and you feel like, oh, I shouldn't ask for this. That's normal. There are limiting beliefs at play, and you can work at them and make them better and make them stronger. But you're always going to be aware that I don't really feel right. And if this isn't you, then good for you. But most people asking for a raise, asking for more money in a job, it can be fearful. It's not a situation that, especially if this is your first time, it's a hard thing to do. But everyone's going to find excuses as to why to not do things, but yet everyone asks for a raise. So why can't it be you? Why can't it be you in any circumstance that you're feeling like, an imposter? So I guess I'm going to share another little story, but just keep in mind that everybody feels this and it never goes away. And you have to get used to that feeling that you're a bit at unease. You have to also leverage that as power in whatever you're doing. There's a bit of adrenaline that goes with this fear. Twist it and use it to motivate you, use it to inspire you. Now, I had to ask for a raise a few times in my life. Back when I was working at Giant Tiger as a stock boy when I was in my teens, and it was uncomfortable. And really, on paper, it wasn't that much of a raise. I wasn't asking for thousands of dollars more each year, but yet it still felt uncomfortable. Fast forward to when I had a corporate job and asked for a raise. The raise was more significant, but the feeling was the same. Nothing changed. And, as I continued in my career and continued making more money, I still have resistance to making money and asking for more. So I'm continuously working at that component, but just know that there's always fear and everybody has it, and that's normal. What's not good for you, though, is not taking action on the next step. And this whole podcast was really inspired through a recent event that I went to called the Powerful Life Experience, which if you're watching this on YouTube or a reel or whatever you're watching, you're going to see I'm wearing the hat here. And I'm a big David Bayer fan, by the way. So if you haven't checked out his podcast, check that out. Really great content on limiting belief and transforming these into empowering beliefs, and talks about stories that you tell yourself of situations, that those stories are your stories and the situation is irrelevant to the story you're telling yourself. So there's a lot of great mindfulness practices that he teaches, and I'd suggest you go through that. But at the event, I made an investment in my future, and the investment was a coaching opportunity that I wanted to explore with David and his group of entrepreneurs looking to make a difference in the world, but struggling with taking the next steps in their mindset. And through the process, I was hesitant to go through the process to say yes. I felt fear. And as I was going through my own process on what I'm feeling and being aware of my thoughts and what's the decisions I'm trying to make, what are the fears I have, are they warranted, or all of these limiting beliefs? And then I also drew inspiration from previous times in my life where I thought it was impossible. And I also heard other people who, rightfully so, by the way, everyone has big objections when it comes to committing to money, time, resources, and being disciplined to take action in the next step. You're accountable now. You're not going anywhere. You just put your money where your mouth is, and it's time to do the work. That's a hard thing for people to face. But then I did draw inspiration from, somebody said, I don't know how to make it work. I've got, a full-time job and I just don't have the time. And I totally get that. I've got 2 kids, family, and it's not always easy, especially, on Tuesdays when I get to record a podcast. It's out of the norm. I want to go to bed, but when I'm inspired, it's great to ride that inspiration. But I thought back to when I did work, what I always refer to as a corporate cubicle cage job, back whenever Sunday nights hit and I hated my life on Monday and I dreaded going in and I just didn't like what I did. But I knew that I was on the path to something better. I had a vision for where I was going. And once you set that vision, which the vision resets on occasion, the vision has become more clear as I got to the next mountain. I got to see the next mountaintop. You can't see where you can't see until you get to the next level. But I decided that I didn't want to be in that job anymore. But it wasn't as easy as just quitting. So sometimes people mistake like, oh, if I make this decision, it means I'm totally have to quit, or it's like a black and white, myself included. I often, when I work with my, emotional freedom therapist and people who help me kind of make sense of my thoughts, I'm a very polarizing person in terms of how I decide things. It has to be black or white. Can't be in between. There's no grays for me. But there are grays, of course, in life. So whenever I was in the corporate cubicle cage and I wanted to escape, I couldn't just quit. I needed to make money. But my brain started to figure out how could I make it work. So the situation was I had a 9-to-5 job for 5 days a week. And on paper, there was no way that I could fit in an extra day to start this next venture, which was buying a farm. I wanted to buy a farm with my previous wife, and I felt like I needed 3 days basically 3 days back to back to be at the farm, get things done, be productive, and be in the right mindset to kind of move to the next level while we were taking on this new endeavor. But at the time, nobody was working 4 days a week, so that was impossible, or so it seemed. So what I did is I just said, listen, I'm working 4 days, I'm doing 9 hours, and that's what I need to do for the next 3 months of my life. And I felt really out of place asking for this because it was an irregular request. What would people think of me? What was my manager going to say? But I made the request. I felt the fear. I moved forward. I did it anyway. And to my surprise and my delight, they said yes. And they were very accommodating. And, because of that, I was able to dedicate the time I needed to make the next transition in my life. But after 3 months, the intent was that I was going to leave. I didn't share that with them at the time, but that was my plan. So Fortunately, I think it all worked out in the end, but that's just an example of making the impossible work. You might be in a situation you think, well, there's no way I could go to 4 days a week, or there's no way I could work from home or less hours than this. Start considering the so-called impossible in anything you're doing. It doesn't have to be escaping the 9 to 5. Just thinking outside the box, and don't constrain yourself to the beliefs that you have set in your mind. How could you make it work? What's that outcome? What's that vision you want to get to? Focus on that rather than the roadblocks, and the vision and the manifestations and the intent are going to unfold something for you. It doesn't always happen overnight, but this is what I've been learning. The other thing to consider is Parkinson's law. I gave myself 3 months. Could I have done it in 2 months? Maybe. Could I have done it in 6 months? Most likely. The amount of time you dedicate to accomplishing something is most likely the time that it's going to take you to accomplish that thing. So, you have to be realistic. And this is something I battle with oftentimes when I hear about these Parkinson's laws or Pareto principles. If I gave myself a day to finish something that's clearly not going to be done in a day, would that be able to get done? No, I think there's a realistic element to, can I get this done in that amount of time? So you have to kind of use your judgment. But the point is, some people drag things on for years when it could have taken them 6 months. Some people drag things on for 2 or 3 months as a quarter when they could have got it done within a week if they would have prioritized the things they needed to get done. So just reconsider that. But really my question is, if any of this is inspiring to you, just to look at your life. And these are just a few examples that I've experienced. And these aren't, big overcoming things, but the point is, the win is the action. It's not the necessary outcome that I escaped the 9 to 5. A lot of people did it, but it's the action and the repetition and getting used to doing that uncomfortable movement, which is doing things while feeling fear and rising to the occasion, being inspired, using it as motivation and leverage to inspire you and motivate others, and to set an intent and a manifestation for things to happen and to be drawn to you. And I continue to do this, and it's a battle for me. It's an up and down. It works, it doesn't work. I'm doing well, I'm not doing well, but I continue to practice it, and I continue to tune into that because I know that it's something that could easily fall off the radar. So the question is today, that I also ask myself often, is what's something you've been putting off because of fear? Take a second to think about that. It could be small, it could be big, but start facing that fear. Understand why you're not taking action. Start asking, how could you take action? How would you feel if you did take action and it worked out? How great would it be if you got the outcome that you wanted, and focus on that outcome and then use that as your inspiration to get through the hard part? Because it is a hard part, but everybody's feeling this. It's normal. So don't be blocked by that. Use that and continue to use it in any decision. The other thing I encourage you to do, including, again, I'm constantly, as I'm doing this, just an accountability metric for myself, is what am I giving myself time to do that I could shorten that or expand upon it to allow for other things to unfold. So as you have multiple objectives, whether in business or your personal life, assessing the priority sequence of what needs to be done. Maybe you have something that in your heart of hearts, you want to get done in the next month, but you've given yourself 6 months to do it because, hey, it's not a priority. That's just a me thing that I want to get done. But how much does that eat at you or your soul and, every single day of your life? That you could have prioritized that, reversed it, flipped the script a bit, and got that done for yourself in the amount of time that you given to something else that wasn't really a priority. So that's something else I encourage you to do. And these are questions, by the way, that it's not a one and done. If these are statements that resonate with you, I encourage you to write them down, read them off a few times, and continue just to be immersed in a learning environment. You might hear this podcast, you might hear this line, it might resonate, you might be inspired, and then you might forget about it, which is totally normal. And a year from now, you might hear it again from another person. So it's not necessarily important to remember exactly this podcast and what I'm saying. The important part is to stay on the journey and the evolution so that you continue to hear the positive messages, the discipline and the routine and the repetition of constantly looking to grow as a human, as a person, as a business person. That's something that I've fallen off the wagon on a lot of times. And this year, I'm using this to be vulnerable to you, to say that, I've fallen off that wagon, and I had to make a big commitment to myself on changing to be more disciplined, to, basically take my own advice in a lot of these times where I feel like I'm preaching, but I'm not actually doing. And I've made a big reset, and it's kind of one day at a time at this point. And I think that's all we can ask of ourselves, and be forgiving in that. So I hope this helps. The big message is feel the fear, do it anyway, and just question. I'm a big believer in questioning everything you're doing in life, challenging your assumptions, but then giving yourself permission to think about change and putting you first. So that's it for today's podcast episode. A little bit different format, but again, I'm here to also give some inspiration to take that next step forward, and whatever that is for you, whether that's the next deal, next relationship, next big life thing you're doing. If this helped you a little bit, just leave a comment, share with a few friends, or, if you're listening to this on a podcast platform, a review. It helps get the word out to other people, and other people that need this message, besides just us having this little conversation together today. But do appreciate you, and we'll see you on the next episode. Take care.